The man who had been Joe Fredersen's first secretary stood in a cell of the Paternoster, the non-stop passenger lift which, like a series of never-ceasing well buckets, transected the new Tower of Babel. With his back pressed against the wooden wall, he was making the journey through the white, humming house, from the heights of the roof to the depths of the cellars and up to the heights again for the 30th time, never moving from that single spot. Persons greedy to gain a few seconds stumbled into the cell with him, and stories higher or lower stumbled out again. Nobody paid the least attention to him. One or two certainly recognized him, but as yet, nobody interpreted the sweat drops on his temples as anything but a similar desperation to save time. All right, he would wait until they knew better, until they took him and threw him out of the cell, demanding, "What are you taking up space for, you fool, if you've got so much time? Crawl down the stairs, or find the nearest fire escape." With a gasping mouth, he leaned there and waited. Now emerging from the depths again, he looked with stupefied eyes toward the room that guarded Joe Fredersen's door and saw Joe Fredersen's son standing there. For the fraction of a second, they stared into each other's overshadowed faces, and the glances of both broke out like distress signals, of very different but equally deep distress. Then the totally indifferent pump works carried the man in the cell upward into the darkness of the tower roof. When he dipped down again, becoming visible once more on his way downward, the son of Joe Fredersen was standing before the opening of the cell, and with a single step, was standing beside the man whose back seemed to be nailed to the wooden wall. "What is your name?" Frieder asked gently. A hesitation in drawing breath, and then the answer, which sounded as though he were listening for something distant. "Josaphat." "What will you do now, Josaphat?" They sank. As they passed through the great hall, the enormous windows of which overlooked the street of bridges broadly and ostentatiously, Frieder turned his head and saw, outlined against the blackness of the sky and already half extinguished, the dripping word, Yoshiwara. He spoke as if stretching out both hands, closing his eyes as he uttered the words. "Will you come to me, Josaphat?" A hand fluttered up like a scared bird. "I," gasped the stranger. "Yes, Josaphat." The young voice was so full of kindness. They sank. Light, darkness again. "Will you come to me, Josaphat?" "Yes," said the strange man with incomparable fervor. "Yes." They dropped into the light. Frieder seized him by the arm and dragged him out with him, out of the great pump works of the new Tower of Babel, holding him fast as he reeled. "Where do you live, Josaphat?" 90th block. House 7. 7th floor. "Then go home, Josaphat. Perhaps I shall come to you myself. Perhaps I shall send a messenger who will bring you to me. I do not know what the next few hours will bring forth. But I do not want any man I know, if I can prevent it, to lie a whole night long staring up at the ceiling until it seems to come crashing down on him." "What can I do for you?" asked the man. Frieder felt the vice-like pressure of his hand. He smiled and shook his head. "Nothing."
"Go home. Wait. Be calm.
"Tomorrow will bring another day, and I hope a fair one." The man loosened the grip of his hand and went. Frieder watched him go. The man stopped, looked back at Frieder, and dropped his head with an expression so earnest and unconditional that the smile died on Frieder's lips. "Yes, man," Frieder said to himself. "I take you at your word." The Paternoster hummed at Frieder's back. The cells, like scoop buckets, gathered men up and poured them out again. But the son of Joe Fredersen did not see them. Among all those tearing along to gain a few seconds, he alone stood still, listening to how the new Tower of Babel roared in its revolutions. The roaring seemed to him like the ringing of one of the cathedral bells, like the bronze voice of the Archangel Michael. But a song hovered above it, high and sweet. His whole young heart exulted in this song. "Have I done your will for the first time, you great mediatress of pity?" he asked into the roar of the bell's voice. But no answer came. Then he went the way he wanted to go, to find the answer. As Slim entered Frieder's home to question the servants concerning their master, Joe Fredersen's son was walking down the steps that led to the lower structure of the new Tower of Babel. As the servants shook their heads at Slim, saying that their master had not come home, Joe Fredersen's son was walking toward the luminous pillars that indicated his way. As Slim, with a glance at his watch, decided to wait, already alarmed, already conjecturing possibilities and how to meet them, Joe Fredersen's son was entering the room from which the new Tower of Babel drew the energies for its own requirements. He had hesitated a long time before opening the door, for a weird existence went on behind that door. There was howling. There was panting. There was whistling. The whole building groaned. An incessant trembling ran through the walls and the floor. And amidst it all, there was not one human sound. Only the objects and the empty air roared. Men in the room on the other side of this door had powerless, sealed lips. But for these men's sakes, Frieder had come. He pushed the door open and then fell back, suffocated. Boiling air smote him, groping at his eyes so that he saw nothing. Gradually, his sight returned. The room was dimly lighted, and the ceiling, which looked as though it could carry the weight of the entire earth, seemed perpetually to be falling down. A faint howling made breathing almost unbearable. It was as though his breath drank in the howling too. Air, rammed down to the depths and coming already used from the lungs of the great metropolis, gushed out of the mouths of pipes. Hurled across the room, it was greedily sucked back by the mouths of pipes on the opposite side. Its howling blast spread a coldness about it that fell into fierce conflict with the sweat heat of the room. In the middle of the room crouched the Paternoster machine. It was like Ganesha, the god with the elephant's head. It shone with oil and had gleaming limbs. Under the crouching body and the head, which was sunken on the chest, crooked legs rested, gnome-like, upon the platform. The trunk and legs were motionless, but the short arms pushed and pushed alternately, forward, backward, forward. A little pointed light sparkled upon the play of the delicate joints. The floor, which was stone and seamless, trembled under the pushing of the little machine, which was smaller than a 5-year-old child. Heat spat from the walls in which the furnaces were roaring. The odor of oil, which whistled with heat, hung in thick layers in the room. Even the wild chase of the wandering masses of air did not clear out the suffocating fumes of oil. Even the water sprayed through the room fought a hopeless battle against the fury of the heat-spitting walls, evaporating, already saturated with oil fumes, before it could protect the skins of the men in this hell from being roasted. Men glided by like swimming shadows. Their movements, the soundlessness of their inaudible slipping past, had something of the black ghostliness of deep-sea divers. Their eyes stood wide open, as though they never closed them. Near the little machine in the center of the room stood a man wearing the uniform of all the workmen of Metropolis, from throat to ankle, the dark blue linen, bare feet in the hard shoes, hair tightly pressed down by the black cap. The hunted stream of wandering air washed around his form, making the folds of the canvas flutter. The man held his hand on the lever, and his gaze was fixed on the clock, the hands of which vibrated like magnetic needles. Frieder groped his way across to the man. He stared at him. He could not see his face. How old was the man? 1,000 years? Or not yet 20? He was talking to himself with babbling lips. What was the man muttering about? And did this man, too, have the face of Joe Fredersen's son? Look at me, Frieder said, bending forward. But the man's gaze did not leave the clock. His hand, also, was unceasingly, feverishly clutching the lever. His lips babbled and babbled excitedly. Frieder listened, catching the words, shreds of words, tattered by the current of air. Paternoster, that means our Father. Our Father, which art in heaven. We are in hell. Our Father, what is thy name? Art thou called Paternoster, our Father? Or Joe Fredersen? Or Machine? Be hallowed by us, Machine. Paternoster, thy kingdom come. Thy kingdom come, Machine. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. What is thy will of us, Machine? Paternoster? Art thou the same in heaven as thou art on earth? Our Father, which art in heaven, when thou carriest us into heaven, shall we keep the machines in thy world, the great wheels which break the limbs of thy creatures, the great merry-go-round called the earth? Thy will be done, Paternoster. Give us this day our daily bread. Grind, Machine, grind flour for our bread. The bread is baked from the flour of our bones. And forgive us our trespasses. What trespasses, Paternoster? The trespass of having a brain and a heart, which thou hast not, machine? And lead us not into temptation. Let us not into temptation to rise against thee, machine, for thou art stronger than we. Thou art 1,000 times stronger than we, and thou art always in the right, and we are always in the wrong, because we are weaker than thou art, machine. But deliver us from evil, machine. Deliver us from thee, machine. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Paternoster, that means, Our Father, which art in heaven. Frieder touched the man's arm. The man started struck dumb. His hand lost its hold of the lever and leaped into the air like a shot bird. The man's jaws stood gaping open as if locked. For 1 second, the white of the eyes in the stiffened face was terribly visible. Then the man collapsed like a rag, and Frieder caught him as he fell. Frieder held him fast. He looked around. Nobody was paying any attention, either to him or to the other man. Clouds of steam and fumes surrounded them like a fog. There was a door nearby. Frieder carried the man to the door and pushed it open. It led to the tool house. A packing case offered a hard resting place, and Frieder let the man slip down onto it. Dull eyes looked up at him. The face to which they belonged was little more than that of a boy. "What is your name?" Frieder said. 11811. "I want to know what your mother called you." "Georgi." "Georgi, do you know me?" Consciousness returned to the dull eyes, together with recognition. "Yes, I know you. You are the son of Joe Fredersen, who is the father of us all."
Yes.
"Therefore I am your brother Georgi, do you see? I heard your Paternoster." The body flung itself up with a heave. "The machine," he sprang to his feet. "My machine? Leave it alone, Georgi, and listen to me. Somebody must be at the machine. Somebody will be at the machine, but not you."
Who will, then? I.
Staring eyes were the only answer. "I," repeated Frieder. "Are you fit to listen to me, and will you be able to take good note of what I say? It is very important, Georgi." "Yes," said Georgi, paralyzed. "We shall now exchange lives, Georgi. You take mine, I take yours. I shall take your place at the machine. You go quietly out in my clothes. Nobody noticed me when I came here. Nobody will notice you when you go. You must only not lose your nerve and keep calm. Keep under cover of where the air is brewing like a mist. When you reach the street, take a car. You will find more than enough money in my pockets. 3 streets further on, change the car. And again after another 3 streets. Then drive to the 90th block. At the corner, pay off the taxi and wait until the driver is out of sight. Then find your way to the 7th floor of the 7th house. A man called Josaphat lives there. You are to go to him. Tell him I sent you. Wait for me or for a message from me. Do you understand, Georgi?" "Yes." But the yes was empty, sounding as if it replied to something other than Frieder's question. A little while later, the son of Joe Fredersen, the master of the great metropolis, was standing before the machine which was like Ganesha, the god with the elephant's head. He wore the uniform of all the workmen of Metropolis, from throat to ankle the dark blue linen, bare feet in the hard shoes, hair firmly pressed down by the black cap. He held his hand on the lever, and his gaze was set on the clock, the hands of which vibrated like magnetic needles. The hunted stream of air washed around him, making the folds of the canvas flutter. Then he felt how slowly, chokingly, from the incessant trembling of the floor, from the walls in which the furnaces whistled, from the ceiling which seemed eternally to be in the act of falling down, from the pushing of the short arms of the machine, and from the steady resistance of the gleaming body, terror welled up in him, terror, even to the certainty of death. He felt, and saw, too, how, from out the swathes of vapor, the long, soft elephant's trunk of the god Ganesha loosened itself from the head sunken on the chest, and gently, with unerring finger, felt for his, Frieder's, forehead. He felt the touch of the sucker, almost cool, not in the least painful, but horrible. Just in the center, over the bridge of the nose, the ghostly trunk sucked itself fast, It was hardly a pain, yet it bored a fine, dead-sure gimlet toward the center of the brain. As though fastened to the clock of an infernal machine, his heart began to thump. Paternoster? 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 I will not, said Frieder, throwing back his head to break the cursed contact. I will not. I will. I will not. He groped, for he felt the sweat dropping from his temples like drops of blood into the pockets of the strange uniform he wore. He felt a rag in one of them and drew it out. He mopped his forehead, and in doing so, felt the sharp edge of a stiff piece of paper, which he had taken hold of together with the cloth. He pocketed the cloth and examined the paper. It was no larger than a man's hand, bearing neither print nor script, being covered over and over with the tracing of a strange symbol and an apparently half-destroyed plan. Frieder tried hard to make something of it, but he did not succeed. Of all the signs marked on the plan, he did not know one. Ways seemed to be indicated, seeming to be false ways, but they all led to one destination, to a place filled with crosses. A symbol of life? Sense and nonsense? As Joe Fredersen's son, Frieder was accustomed swiftly and correctly to grasp anything called a plan. He pocketed the plan, though it remained before his eyes. The sucker of the elephant's trunk of the god Ganesha glided down to the occupied, unsubdued brain which reflected, analyzed, and sought. The head, not tamed, sank back into the chest. Obediently, eagerly worked the little machine which drove the Paternoster of the new Tower of Babel. A little glimmering light played upon the more delicate joints almost on the top of the machine, like a small, malicious eye. The machine had plenty of time. Many hours would pass before the master of Metropolis, before Joe Fredersen, would tear the food which his machines were chewing up from the teeth of his mighty machines. Quite softly, almost smilingly, the gleaming eye, the malicious eye of the delicate machine, looked down upon Joe Fredersen's son, who was standing before it. Georgi had left the new Tower of Babel unchallenged through various doors, and the city received him, the great metropolis which swayed in the dance of light, and which was herself a dancer. He stood in the street, drinking in the drunken air. He felt white silk on his body. On his feet, he felt shoes that were soft and supple. He breathed deeply, and the fullness of his own breath filled him with the highest, intoxicating intoxication. He saw a city he had never seen. He saw it as a man he had never been. He did not walk in a stream of others, a stream 12 files deep. He wore no blue linen, no hard shoes, no cap. He was not going to work. Work was put away. Another man was doing his work for him. A man had come to him and had said, "We shall now exchange lives, Georgi. You take mine, and I yours. When you reach the street, take a car. You will find more than enough money in my pockets. You will find more than enough money in my pockets. You will find more than enough money in my pockets." Georgi looked at the city he had never seen. The intoxication of the lights. Ecstasy of brightness. Thousand-limbed city, built up of blocks of light. Towers of brilliance. Steep mountains of splendor. From the velvety sky above you showers golden rain, inexhaustibly, as into the open lap of Danae.
Metropolis. Metropolis.
Like a drunken man, he took his first steps, saw a flame which hissed up into the heavens. A rocket wrote in drops of light on the velvety sky the word, Yoshiwara. Georgi ran across the street, reached the steps, and, taking 3 steps at a time, reached the roadway. Soft, flexible, a black, willing beast, a car approached and stopped at his feet. Georgi sprang into the car and fell back upon the cushions, the engine of the powerful automobile vibrating soundlessly. A recollection stiffened the man's body. Was there not, somewhere in the world, and not so very far away, under the soul of the new Tower of Babel, a room run through by incessant trembling? Did not a delicate little machine stand in the middle of this room, shining with oil and having strong, gleaming limbs? Under the crouching body and the head, which was sunken on the chest, crooked legs rested, gnome-like, upon the platform. The trunk and legs were motionless, but the short arms pushed and pushed and pushed, alternately forward, backward, and forward. The floor, which was of stone and seamless, trembled under the pushing of the little machine, which was smaller than a 5-year-old child. The voice of the driver asked, "Where to, sir?" "Straight on," motioned Georgi with his hand. "Anywhere." The man had said to him, "Change the car after the 3rd Street." But the rhythm of the motor car embraced him too delightfully. 3rd Street, 6th Street, it was still very far to the 90th block. He was filled with the wonder of being thus couched, the bewilderment of the lights, the shudder of entrancement at the motion. The further that, with the soundless gliding of the wheels, he drew away from the new Tower of Babel, the further did he seem to draw away from the consciousness of his own self. Who was he? Had he not just stood in a greasy, patched, blue linen uniform, in a seething hell, his brain mangled by eternal watchfulness, with bones the marrow of which was being sucked out by eternally making the same turn of the lever to eternally the same rhythm, with a face scorched by unbearable heat, and in the skin of which the salty sweat tore its devouring furrows? Did he not live in a town that lay deeper under the earth than the underground stations of Metropolis, with their 1,000 shafts, in a town the houses of which storied just as high above squares and streets as, above in the night, did the houses of Metropolis, which towered so high, one above the other? Had he ever known anything else than the horrible sobriety of these houses, in which there lived not men, but numbers, recognizable only by the enormous placards by the house doors? Had his life ever had any purpose other than to go out from these doors, framed with numbers, out to work, when the sirens of Metropolis howled for him, and 10 hours later, crushed and tired to death, to stumble into the house by the door of which his number stood? Was he, himself, anything but a number? Number 11,811, crammed into his linen, his clothes, his cap? Had not the number also become imprinted into his soul, into his brain, into his blood, so that he must even stop and think of his own name? And now, his body, refreshed by pure cold water which had washed the sweat of labor from him, felt with wonderful sweetness the yielding relaxation of all his muscles. With a quiver which rendered all his muscles weak, he felt the caressing touch of white silk on the bare skin of his body. While giving himself up to the gentle, even rhythm of the motion, the consciousness of the first and complete deliverance from all that which had put so agonizing a pressure on his existence overcame him with so overpowering a force that he burst out into the laughter of a madman, his tears falling uncontrollably. Violently, yes, with a glorious violence, the great city whirled toward him, like a sea that roars around mountains. The workman number 11811, the man who lived in a prison-like house under the underground railway of Metropolis, who knew no other way than that from the hole in which he slept to the machine, and from the machine back to the hole, this man saw, for the first time in his life, the wonder of the world which was Metropolis, the city by night, shining under millions and millions of lights. He saw the ocean of light which filled the endless trails of streets with a silver, flashing luster. He saw the the wisp sparkle of the electric advertisements, lavishing themselves inexhaustibly in an ecstasy of brightness. He saw towers projecting, built up of blocks of light, feeling himself seized, overpowered to a state of complete impotence by this intoxication of light, feeling this sparkling ocean with its hundreds and thousands of spraying waves to reach out for him, to take the breath from his mouth, to pierce him, suffocate him. And then he grasped that this city of machines, this city of sobriety, this fanatic for work, sought at night the mighty counterpoise to the frenzy of the day's work, that this city at night lost itself, as if insane, as if entirely witless, in the intoxication of a pleasure which, flinging up to all heights and hurtling down to all depths, was boundlessly blissful and boundlessly destructive. Georgi trembled from head to foot, and yet it was not really trembling which seized his resistless body. It was as though all his members were fastened to the soundless evenness of the engine which bore them forward. No, not to the single engine which was the heart of the motor car in which he sat, to all these hundreds and thousands of engines which were driving an endlessly gliding, double stream of gleaming, illuminated automobiles onward through the streets of the city in its nocturnal fever. At the same time, his body was set in vibration by the fireworks of spark-streaming wheels, 10-colored lettering, snow-white fountains of overcharged lamps, rockets hissing upward, and towers of flame blazing ice cold. There was a word which always recurred. From an invisible source, there shot up a sheaf of light, which, bursting apart at the highest point, dropped down letters in all colors of the rainbow from the velvet black sky of Metropolis. The letters formed themselves into the word, Yoshiwara. What did that mean? Yoshiwara? From the ironwork of the elevated railway track, a yellow-skinned fellow hung head downwards, suspended by the crooks of his knees, letting a snowstorm of white sheets of paper shower down upon the double row of motor cars. The pages fluttered and fell. Georgie's glance caught one of them. Upon it stood, in large, distorted letters, Yoshiwara. The car stopped at a crossing. Yellow-skinned fellows in many-colored embroidered silk jackets wound themselves, supple as eels, through the 12-fold strings of waiting cars. One of them swung himself onto the footboard of the black motor car in which Georgie sat. For 1 second, the grinning hideousness stared into the young, white, helpless face. A sheaf of handbills was hurled through the window, falling upon Georgie's knee and before his feet. He bent down mechanically and picked up that for which his fingers were groping. On these slips, which gave out a penetrating, bittersweet, seductive perfume, there stood, in large, bewitched-looking letters, the word, Yoshiwara. Georgie's throat was as dry as dust. He moistened his cracked lips with his tongue, which lay heavy and as though parched in his mouth. A voice had said to him, "You will find more than enough money in my pockets." Enough money, what for? To clutch and drag near this city, this mighty, heavenly, hellish city, to embrace her with both arms, both legs, in the impotence of mastering her, to despair, to throw oneself into her, take me, to feel the filled bowl at one's lips, gulping, not drawing breath, the brim of the bowl set fast between the teeth, eternal insatiability, competing with the eternal overflow, overpouring of the bowl of intoxication.
Ah, Metropolis. Metropolis.
More than enough money. A strange sound came from Georgie's throat, and there was something in it of the throat rattle of a man who knows he is dreaming and wants to awake, and something of the guttural sound of a beast of prey when it scents blood. His hand did not let go of the wad of banknotes for the second time. He screwed it up in burning, convulsive fingers. He turned his head this way and that, as though seeking a way out which, nevertheless, he feared to find. Another car slipped silently along beside his, a great, black gleaming shadow, the couch of a woman set on 4 wheels, decorated with flowers, lighted by dim lamps. Georgie saw the woman very clearly, and the woman looked at him. She cowered rather than sat among the cushions of the car, having entirely wrapped herself in her gleaming cloak, from which one shoulder projected with the dull whiteness of a swan's feather. She was bewilderingly made up, as though she did not wish to be human, to be a woman, but rather a peculiar animal, disposed, perhaps to play, perhaps to murder. Calmly holding the man's gaze, she gently slipped her right hand, sparkling with stones, and her slender arm, which was quite bare and dull white even as the shoulder, from the wrappings of her cloak, and began to fan herself in a leisurely manner with one of the sheets of paper on which the word Yoshiwara stood. "No," said the man. He panted, wiping the perspiration from his forehead. Coolness welled out from the fine, strange fabric with which he dried the perspiration from his brow. Eyes stared at him, eyes which were fading away. The all-knowing smile of a painted mouth. With a panting sound, Georgie made to open the door of the taxi and to jump out into the road. However, the movement of the car threw him back onto the cushions. He clenched his fists, pressing them before both eyes. A vision shot through his head, quite misty and lacking in outline. A strong little machine, no larger than a 5-year-old child. Its short arms pushed and pushed and pushed, alternately forward, backward, forward. The head, sunken on the chest, rose, grinning. "No!" shrieked the man, clapping his hands and laughing. He had been set free from the machine. He had exchanged lives. Exchanged with whom? With a man who had said, "You will find more than enough money in my pockets." The man bent back his head into the nape of his neck and stared at the roof suspended above him. On the roof there flamed the word, Yoshiwara. The word Yoshiwara became rockets of light which showered around him, paralyzing his limbs. He sat motionless, covered in a cold sweat. He clawed his fingers into the leather of the cushions. His back was stiff, as though his spine were made of cold iron.
His jaws chattered.
"No," said Georgi, tearing his fists down. But before his eyes, which stared into space, the word flamed up, Yoshiwara. Music was in the air, hurled into the nocturnal streets by enormous loudspeakers. Wanton was the music, most heated of rhythm, of a shrieking, lashing gaiety. "No," panted the man. Blood trickled in drops from his bitten lips. But 100 multicolored rockets wrote in the velvet-black sky of Metropolis the word, Yoshiwara. Georgi pushed the window open. The glorious town of Metropolis, dancing in the drunkenness of light, threw itself impetuously toward him, as though he were the only beloved, the only awaited. He leaned out of the window, crying, Yoshiwara. He fell back upon the cushions. The car turned in a gentle curve, round in another direction. A rocket shot up and wrote in the sky above Metropolis, Yoshiwara.